Hey guys, welcome to Unplugged Performance. Today we're going to be installing our rear sway bar on this Model Y Juniper. So this install really doesn't need much. You're talking literally a 10mm socket, an 11mm socket, a 15mm socket, and a 21 to remove the wheels. There's really only a few different torque specs as well. You essentially need to torque the wheels to make sure those stay on the car, as well as the brackets for this new sway bar and then the end link to the sway bar itself. Outside of that, it's relatively straightforward, so let's get to it. Alrighty, now the wheel removal is not a requirement, but if you are going to be changing the height of your vehicle and going with a height adjustable end link, you should be considering removing the wheel because the end link itself that connects to the hub side is a little bit difficult to get a wrench around, and the working space is a little bit limited. So if you are changing the height of your vehicle, I do recommend removing the wheels when you are installing the sway bar and end links just to make sure you have proper working. Now for this car, we're not going to be doing any height adjustment, so we're going to proceed to the underbody of the vehicle. First things first, we're going to go ahead and remove this factory undershield that is blocking access to the factory sway bar brackets, which are located right underneath. Once we remove all of these 10 mils, we can remove the tray and then we'll have access to those brackets as well as the end link retainer nuts. All right, we did remove all 11 10mm bolts that retain the rear shield to the vehicle itself. There are two more push clips that do hold it in place located near the front of the rear wheels. They actually secure the undershield to the fender liner itself. So once you pull those out, this will essentially fall away from the vehicle. Make sure you have one hand on it so it doesn't just whoosh on the floor. Now, once those two push clips have been removed, you're gonna drop the front side of the under tray and then pull away, as there are tabs on the back side that do retain it to the rear bumper. All right guys, now that we have the undershield off, we now have access to the factory sway bar. Now from the factory, the sway bar itself is not adjustable. However, the one that we're gonna be installing on this does have 3 different settings which allow you to tune the sway bar to whatever your preferred riding characteristics may be. Today we're gonna be starting with removing the brackets first, and once those are removed and the sway bar is hanging on the end links themselves, we'll go ahead and counter hold the end link stud and remove those lock nuts. Now something to keep in mind, Tesla has made a lot of revisions to their entire product line as they find more efficient ways to produce these vehicles. So there is a chance that you may run into either a torque spit on the stud of your rear end link or an Allen key, so just keep that in mind. To do so, using an 11mm socket, remove the 4 bolts securing the sway bar to the vehicle. Now something you may find that's a little bit different on the Juniper Launch Edition relative to any of the other Tesla platforms is the sway bar itself in the rear does actually come with shim plates, which look like so. These are going to be reused in combination with the UP sway bar that we're going to be installing today. So using a 15mm end wrench and a 5mm Allen key to counter hold the end link stud, you're going to go ahead and remove the lock nut. Once both lock nuts have been removed, you can remove the sway bar from the vehicle once you slide them off the end link studs. We have them side by side here, as well as all of the factory hardware that we removed, aside from the 10 mils for the under tray. We do have the end link nuts as well as the factory bolts that secure the sway bar brackets to the vehicle. Those are going to be reused with the UP sway bar. However, the bushings and brackets on the factory bar are not. We actually include our own bushings and brackets. So we're going to go ahead and pair those with the bar, as well as reuse all of the factory hardware that we did remove from the vehicle when installing this UP bar. Now, when you're looking at these sway bars side by side, you'll notice 2 things. One, that there is a diameter variance between the two, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that determines what the rate or strength of that sway bar is, because there are a few different ways to manufacture sway bars, whether they're solid or hollow, that can affect what the overall rate of that sway bar is. Now, all things considered, the second thing that you're gonna notice here is the actual adjustability of the sway bar. The factory comes with a single slot, which means it is a fixed rate bar. However, our bar that we're gonna be installing today is gonna have 3 different adjustability options. Now, when it comes to sway bars themselves, usually unless you have a specific goal and a recommendation from the manufacturer, the best thing to do is start with either the soft or the middle setting as a baseline, and then essentially make your adjustments accordingly as you see fit based on the vehicle dynamics that you're looking for. All right, now when it comes to the bushings themselves, people have their different approaches. This is a split bushing, which you can force your way over the bar. I find it a little bit easier to slide over the edge, like so. And then this is going to be the proper placement for that bushing. Now you're going to notice there is also a grease packet that comes with it. Obviously, if there's only 2 bushings, you're going to use about 50% for one and the other 50% for the other. I prefer to put the grease into the bushing within the crease after I've slid it on, as opposed to spreading that grease across the bar and then no longer having enough adequate grease to ensure that you have proper mobility of the sway bar, because this is a very dynamic sway bar. Now there is going to be a little bit of excess grease. This is not exactly a clean process, but one thing that I like to do is essentially use it little bit of that excess grease to apply to the outer surface of this bushing to ensure that when you do apply the bracket over the bushing itself, there's no friction, which would potentially incur some type of squeak or noise symptoms. So just to ensure that everything is seated properly, greasing the outside of the bracket to slide the outside of the bushing to slide the bracket over is always a good practice. All right, now that we have the bushing all greased up and on the bar, we're ready to install the bracket onto the bar. Now there is no special orientation for this, and same goes for the bushing. They're not side specific. Those are going to be cross compatible for side to side. So once you complete this step on this side, repeat the same bushing and bracket installation on the other, and then we'll proceed to install this bar onto the car. We're going to set the sway bar on the medium setting and just let it rest on the end link studs for now. Step one is going to be to secure the sway bar to the end links themselves using the factory 15mm nuts. Next, using your 5mm Allen key and your 15mm end wrench, be sure that you counterhold the stud as you lock that lock nut in place. Using one 11mm bolt and one provided washer, you go ahead and secure each sway bar bracket to the factory mounting point accordingly. And then to start, we're just going to go hand tight on all of these bolts until all 4 are installed. And then we'll proceed to final torque across all hardware. Now, as mentioned before, we are going to be reusing the factory shim on this Model Y Juniper when installing this, so you have to keep in mind that you need to both align the bracket and the shim to allow the bolt to secure the sway bar to the vehicle. All right, now we're ready to apply final torque. On the 11mm bolt securing the sway bar brackets to the vehicle, you're going to be applying 22 foot-pounds of torque. And then on the 15mm end link lock nuts, you're going to be applying 40 foot-pounds. All right, now that everything's torqued, we can go ahead and get that undershield back on using the 2 push clips that we removed, as well as the 11 10mm bolts. Once that's done, the car's ready to hit the road.